thank you all for being here today, participating in the governance of your cooperative. That's what makes things work. And I just want to first acknowledge all the great support our Ohio's Electric Cooperative program has had from North Central Electric Cooperative. Marcus Bryant serves on our board of Buckeye Power. Dennis Schindler has been in a leadership position on our board for Ohio's Electric Cooperatives, your statewide association of electric cooperatives, and all the things that you hear today that you're doing, the People Fund, your political action. That's what we need to do to stick together to make this program work. As we are all part of one big network here in Ohio, there's 25 electric cooperatives serving the rural areas of the state of Ohio. This is one of them. Buckeye Power serves all of those, their power generation needs. That's what we're in business to do, is to produce your electricity. And as Dwayne was talking about political action, our business has become more political than ever. We need more support than ever so that we can continue to do our job for you in the way that you want it done. Together, we serve over 1 million people in Ohio. And Dwayne talked about how many of you there are in voting, and it's really important that we all get out there and support ourselves. As Ohio's electric cooperatives, we're also part of a bigger network of the electric grid across this region. There's a grid operator called PJM that is interconnection, that's responsible for operating the grid in the several states around us. And then we're affected by national policies and politics. And so all of these things affect us, they all matter to us, and we're all in it together. There's a few points I'd just like to make today for you that maybe you haven't heard about, but I want you to hopefully remember when you leave today. There's four basic points I want to make. The first one is that the electricity that we use today is produced in a way that's cleaner than it's ever been by a lot. Not by a little bit, but by a lot. We produce power more cleanly, more efficiently than we've ever done. You know, we hear about all the problems. Well, guess what? We've made a lot of accomplishments in this area too. Now that's come at a cost. Your electric rates went up through much of the 2000s as we invested, as Dwayne had said earlier, $1 billion in emission control equipment at our power plants so that we could operate some of the cleanest electric power plants in the world, and we do. The second point is this transition is taking place in our country from coal, which has provided the bulk of our electricity for many decades, towards natural gas and renewable energy. And mostly that's going to be a good thing for us. It allows our electric system to be cleaner than it's ever been, and those sources are more affordable than they used to be. So this is a good transition, but it's a big change. And my third point is that we need to be careful about the reliability that we come to depend on of our electric system and the affordability that is important to all of you as well. And if we're not careful, we can have a problem. The last point is the way we get from here to there in a way that is everybody wins is fewer mandates from our government, a little bit more time to let these natural changes that are taking place that are good for all of us to take place. Here's a chart that shows what the emissions from our coal-fired power plant have been since 1990. I told you it's cleaner than it's ever been by a lot. Just look at how those lines go down. Today, when we produce the electricity for most of the consumers of the state of Ohio, the rural electric cooperatives, with almost no emissions of our traditional pollutants compared to what we used to have. Over 90% reductions in those items. And as I said before, that's come at a cost. Here's the price of wholesale power that we charge North Central that they pass on then to you in your power cost adjustment each month. Went up through much of the 2000s as we paid to invest in those. But by 2012, we really had completed this cleanup of our system, and we've been able to hold our rates flat since then. And we're trying to do that for as long as we can. We think that we should be able to do that for several years if we could just slow down some of the regulatory oversight that we're getting from the government today. All right, I said reliability is something that we need to be concerned about and we shouldn't take for granted as a system. This is a map of that grid operation around us, the PJM interconnection. Every dot on there, every blue dot, is a power plant that used to make electricity a couple years ago and doesn't anymore. Those are power plants that have been closed down over the last few years, primarily because they didn't want to invest in the kind of environmental controls that were needed to meet the current environmental regulations that we operate under. And almost all of them are coal-fired power plants. The bigger the dot, the bigger the power plant. But those are plants that have gone away, they're not going to return to service, so we've got to get by with fewer plants. Now, we are adding some new ones, but this is a big change that we're undertaking. And this chart shows where our electricity comes from now as a country. As recently as 2005, over on the left side of the chart, we got over 50% of our electricity in this country from coal-fired power plants, and that had been true for many decades before that. And we got about 20% of it from natural gas, and just a little tiny bit, about 2% from renewable energies like wind and solar. You fast forward to today in 2016, for the first time ever, we're going to produce more electricity with natural gas than with coal. Coal's down to about 32% of our electricity from 50% just 10 years ago. That's a big shift. This country uses a lot of electricity. That's a big change. Now fortunately we have more natural gas than we've ever had, and it's more affordable than ever, so it's a natural change. You can also see that renewable energies have been growing and continue to grow. Today, we're getting over 8% of our electricity from wind and solar, and that's continuing to grow. And I think that's going to be a good thing for us. Okay, but with all this good news that's happening around us, we're still stuck with some bad public policy that we're going to have to deal with. The U.S. government EPA has put forth something they call the Clean Power Plan, which just means regulating carbon dioxide emissions from power plants. It's something that we think is a bad idea, and it's a bad idea for a couple reasons. One, we don't think they're legally entitled to put in place these regulations, and so far the Supreme Court has agreed with us about that. Second, it puts the EPA as the person that is managing your electric power system, as opposed to the people that are trained and have been managing your power system for the last 100 years across the country. So we switch from the traditional regulators and the people that run electric utilities to the EPA running our electric power system. That's probably not going to work out. And finally, it's a very heavy-handed regulatory system that's going to accomplish a very little bit more than we would accomplish on our own anyways. Go ahead. This shows what the emissions of carbon dioxide from power production have been over the last 10 years. They're down over 20% in the last 10 years. This is without any federal regulations at all. These are those trends that I've been talking about. Less coal, more natural gas, more renewables, more investment in environmental control, more efficient plants. We've been able to drive this down to 20%. The goal of the government is to get it down 30% by 2030, and under their plan, it's going to cost us millions of dollars more to get a couple more percent than what we would have got anyways, and that's why we think it's a bad idea. Okay, finally, I just want to leave you with a few thoughts. Your Ohio electric cooperatives remain focused on providing you reliable, safe, clean, and affordable electricity. And that's what these guys are doing for you every day, and that's what we're trying to do in Columbus as well. We have an opportunity today for abundant and affordable energy supplies for the foreseeable future if we just don't mess it up. We need less regulation and more time for the fundamental forces that are driving our industry to put in place sustainable changes that will last, that'll be affordable, that'll prove to be reliable. And then finally, I just want to remind us that we're all in this together. We need to stick together. We're going to continue to advocate for common sense solutions on your behalf. We need your support, and we appreciate everything you've done for us. So thank you all. Thank you for being here tonight.